I disagree.
I disagree.
You don't have the right to my opinion.
I'm just trying to save the world, man.
I don't know, maybe.
It's legit.
Can I finish?
Can't fit. Hold on. Fine.
And now, disagree to disagree.
Greetings and salutations, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of Disagree to Disagree. I am Jason, and with me, as always, is
Brett.
Oh, we're getting tight on that, buddy. We're getting good. Almost ready to take this live, I think.
Too late.
Before we get started, a quick word from our sponsor. Today's show is brought to you by the Wisconsin Dairy Industry, who reminds you the cows are milked by robots now. We got a fascinating show for you today. We're going to spend maybe about 10 minutes talking about the crazy week that was, and then we are going to launch into a extended conversation about guns in America.
Guns in America.
But before we do any of that, I think we're contractually obligated to do some social media plugging.
That's right, Jason. You guys all can find us at Apple, Spotify, Google Podcast, and YouTube. And you guys can hit us up on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the D2D Podcast. 2 is numerical. On Twitter, Instagram, Facebook at the D2D Podcast, Jason.
And subscribe and share.
That's right.
And like and comment.
Let's get the conversation going.
Do it all. So, getting back to the regularly scheduled throat noise.
I don't think that was. What the hell kind of noise was that?
No, I was trying to do
what were you thinking of when you made that noise?
The throat singing monks, but like I tried to do it really quickly, and I sounded like a inebriated frog. But you know, like if I really took my time, I feel like I could do it a little more justice. Probably not much more justice than I did it, so it's not worth it.
Okay.
But moving on.
Moving right along.
Do you want to start us off? We've got a laundry list of things. I would say maybe the VP debate or Trump.
Yeah, let's discuss the VP debate since that's kind of the most recent thing between Kamala Harris and Mike Pence. In terms of my opinion of the debate, I don't think it's going to really move the needle either way for voters. But with it being the most viewed vice presidential debate, I think a lot of people tuned in. I believe, what was it, a ratings record they may have had for that?
Yeah.
And you and I have heard this on the news, at least I'm sure you have, that probably one of the reasons why so many people tuned in is because the age of the two presidential nominees, President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden, because of their age, people want to know, well, let's hear from the people that could potentially go from number 2 to number 1 on the depth chart.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I did not watch the debate. The last debate broke me, man. And as much as I was looking forward to it, the day came and I just didn't do it. I have watched a lot of the subsequent replays of clips. I will say this, I think that Mike Pence could give a TED talk on how not to answer a question. And the fly won the debate. I mean, those are my two takeaways. I also think it doesn't move the needle. Nothing seems to move the needle anymore.
It's funny how you say that Pence didn't answer the question. And again, this is where Brett comes back to. He's looking at both sides again. They both did it. They really did. Kamala Harris didn't really approach the packing the Supreme Court. Pence also didn't cover pre-existing conditions for the ACA or healthcare in general. And it was real interesting to see how they both did that. And they both really, in all honesty, I was actually kind of amazed at how in agreement a lot of the different mainstream media was. They both, as we've said already, didn't move the needle much for voters. And they both had questions that they did not answer. I know a lot of people reached out to me and expressed pretty much the same sentiments. So it feels pretty universal. Again, if you want to say who did better than the other, I think that's where the debate kind of comes in between you and I.
Well, and I think this gets back to an argument we often have. You say both sides, and I say it's a measure of the degree of it. I would say Mike Pence didn't answer 5 times as many questions as Kamala Harris evaded, though she did evade a few. So I think that to equate them equally is to be not true to what happened. Again, I didn't watch the debate, so I'm probably wrong.
When I watched the debate, I felt Kamala Harris is just as much at guilt for doing that as Pence. I felt Pence actually did better than I gave him credit for. I thought he was going to be much more wooden and straight, and he wasn't. I felt he was a little bit more on top of the discussion. I felt he controlled the debate a little bit more, but Kamala Harris didn't back down, and that's to her credit. And I think that in terms of the debate overall, much more constructive than the first and only so far presidential debate.
I just want to know what kind of person doesn't notice there's a fly on their head for 2 solid minutes.
Hey, buddy, I can go back and show you a whole bunch of more videos of that happening to Hillary and Obama, a whole bunch.
Yeah, we all saw the flies.
It happens.
We saw the flies go in and out of frame. That happens. A fly landing and staying there on a snow white head for 2 solid minutes. Obama snatched one out of midair. He smacked that guy.
Okay. All right. I remember seeing a lot of coverage where they would land on him and things. So
yeah, they would land and they would go away. It's the duration. It's the duration of the fly. It's the duration.
The fly to me is a straw man discussion or argument, and it's funny. It's fun to point out, fly, but
don't you
whatever.
think 5 years from now that is what's going to be remembered from this debate?
I don't think the debate will be remembered at all in 5 years. Jason, do you remember the last vice presidential debate yourself? No.
All right, should we move on? In our lightning round of
what's the next one that you would like to discuss that's kind of going on currently?
Trump resurrected from the hospital by Jesus Christ himself,
or Dr. Frankenstein?
Oh my goodness, he is starting to act more and more like a wild beast backed into a cage. He's always been erratic. He's always been impulsive, but his ping-ponging between wildly different stances in this last week has got everybody, I think, rightfully concerned. Like, are the steroids affecting his mood? It's a whole new level. You just, whenever you think it can't be another level, it's a whole new level. I could not be more ready for the Trump show to be changed. You know, like I just want a different channel. Like,
you want to change the channel?
It's all the same to me anymore. It's just a flurry of, I don't know. I mean, I have a hard time articulating it because it's so beyond the pale that every time I try to describe it, it seems inadequate.
I personally, for me, I'm glad that he's healthy. I'm glad that his wife, Melania, First Lady, is healthy. That's good. And I was really pleased on how it felt just for a moment that everyone kind of came together. Like, our president's sick. It's very serious. It's COVID. And there was a short period of time where I felt like everyone was kind of well-wishing and being very mature about things and being good people. And of course that, went away eventually. As far as his mood, because of the different treatments that he's getting, again, this is the same media that's going to criticize Trump no matter what he does. And I think it's just more digging and searching and trying to scratch at the walls just to find pretty much anything. But it's amazing how he came out of the hospital, 3-4 days after being in there, and the White House physician gives him, he's good. He's not going to be able to transmit COVID.
Well, he got steamrolled just like everybody else with Trump. Trump's going to do what Trump wants to do, especially when he's the one with the ultimate power.
Sure.
And, I just, don't you think it's a little awful that he's going back to these types of events where it just feels like he's learned nothing. Like I don't need the mask. I can have people in close quarters. It's so, he could have, this is another one of those things where it's an unforced error. He could have come out and even just pretended to have learned a lesson, and he would have gotten a lot of those suburban housewives who just are having a hard time with him right now, and they voted for him last time. He could have gotten them back by showing a softer side, and instead he has some Evita Peron moment up on the balcony, takes off his mask.
Well, he was distancing himself, so that's good. So you got to give him credit for that. He came out of the hospital. He had it. He's doing well. So he distanced himself. Yeah, and he still holds a rally in open air, which is something that's prescribed by the CDC and Human Health Services, have gatherings in more open air environments. And he did that. Was his timing of coming out too soon? Again, it's analyzing everything he does. And Trump's going to still go out. He's still going to have those open air rallies. He's trying to do a more traditional type approach to campaign rallying, and there's criticism to be met on both sides. In my mind, if the physician gives him full bill of health, he's good to go. Then get back on the campaign trail, go back to work, and show people that you can recover from this.
I don't have a problem with that in theory, but everything we know about this says that he needs at least another 5-6 days to keep other people safe. He's working in the Oval Office right now without a mask on, and other people are in basically hazmat suits. I get it. I get the fact that he is behind, and there are scant days left to campaign and make that up. He's in a terrible political position.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Damned if you do, damned if you don't on this one, I guess.
Pretty much.
Okay, so then transitioning to all of the horrible acts of God, is that what we're doing now? My goodness, when you recap things, it really brings you down.
A little bit, just because I think that's part of being in the media, isn't it? It's never that story about the cat saved in the tree. It's about the wildfires on the West Coast and hurricanes in the Gulf.
It ain't all puppies and rainbows. Next week I'm going to get to the bottom of rainbows and puppies.
The thing with the hurricanes and wildfires and some of these quote unquote natural disasters, acts of God, isn't it it feels a little bit just kind of taking away the politics of it, just the optics with everything else that's kind of been churned up in our society. It's like, one more thing added onto our backs that we have to carry. And all those people out there have seen the photographs of out west. And I have a family friend that is a wildfire fighter. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was gone from his family for most of the summer. And just the battling that these guys have to do, the images that I've seen from out there, it almost has that Milton-esque vision of this apocalyptic hellscape.
Yeah.
And how just dark and ashy and this orange glow off of things. Something that isn't really talked about is how is this going to affect the growing seasons for the harvest coming up? California alone, I think, provides, I could be wrong about this, 20% of the agricultural food sources for the country, and all this ash, and also affecting the fish hatcheries because ash and water create lime, and fish aren't going to be able to survive in an environment like that.
Yeah, and let's get to the real tragedy, wine country.
Oh, well, yeah, for you.
I mean, my goodness.
The vino is going to be more expensive. Yeah, they've been getting wiped out, the vineyards out there.
Yeah,
just absolutely wiped.
In that area of California, that sort of central area of California, so beautiful. And so much of it is on fire. And you're right, it does look like the apocalypse.
And it seems like the Gulf Coast can't escape hurricanes. How many hurricanes has it been this year thus far?
I don't know, but when you think about how hard 2020 has been, and then you think about somebody living on a low-lying Louisiana coastal plain,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. It does feel like the cumulative effect of all of this bad news. It's usually like, oh, there's a storm coming. And the news focuses on that storm almost exclusively. For like 48 hours.
Yep.
We see the storm coming. We see the aftermath of the storm.
The weatherman that does the live takedown on the beach and gets blown away.
We see the guys come in and feed meals, and now it's just relegated to like, it's buried on page 6, It's like, and another storm hit Louisiana. And if you're not in Louisiana, that's not page 1 news. And it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
much going on.
I know.
And our thoughts and prayers to all the families on the West Coast, Gulf Coast, and everywhere else in the United States that's just going through these particular weather events.
All right. And so finally, I have got to bring this up. Brett would not let me play the audio. But
not from your phone into the microphone, Jason. No,
I just can't let it slide that Melania Trump said, "Who gives a fork about Christmas?" And she did not use the word fork. All right.
Mm-hmm.
She used the word fuck.
Mm-hmm.
I gave 2 versions. 2 versions there.
The only thing I really have to say about that, I tried to find the audio for that, and pretty much what I found online and in some of the news reports were just edited segments, and I feel like there was maybe more context to it. But on a funnier note, I just think it's hilarious hearing the First Lady kind of swear like a sailor. I mean, she's got a real mouth on her, and I think that's kind of funny a little bit. But I don't know. It's like anything else when you have these edited segments. You don't know what the context is, and I believe the audio came from the author of a book that she was writing about her and Melania and maybe their relationship. So I don't know. It's still funny at the end of the day, but I don't really hold a lot of water with it.
I feel like Republicans' heads would have exploded had Michelle Obama been caught on tape saying anything close to that. And it's crazy. It's because we're living in this like fast forward reality, something like that just gets swept away.
I think the point that if she was making that I was going to try to interpret was she was just upset that she had to do Christmas decorating when there's bigger issues to be going on. But it happened. She got caught, and it's not going to really do anything. So I'm just going to have a ha-ha.
Nothing matters anymore, man. Nothing matters. Things stopped mattering in 2016, apparently. Finally, in current events, I think we're going to talk about the events in Michigan, the plot to kidnap the governor there, which will, I guess, lead us into our larger conversation about
guns in America.
Guns in America. Yeah. Oh, boy. Here we go.
Jason, do we need a safe word here before we proceed?
Like nutter butter?
Sassafras?
Maybe. I don't know. I do think that...
I think we can have a mature conversation about this, but still be passionate about our views on it.
Yeah, and that is the hope. One of the things we want to do with this podcast is have discussions we don't see elsewhere. And we're not going to agree. We're probably going to strongly disagree sometimes. I want you to know at the outset of this conversation that I'm going to do my best to listen to what you're saying and hear it and not just steamroll or have my immovable opinion.
And that is a sentiment that I likewise believe in. We both have to listen to what each other has to say because this is a pretty hot topic for a lot of folks, if not most folks. So I'm going to do my best to not interrupt you because I get very excited and I want to jump into the conversation. So we'll just have to be patient with each other a little bit.
Well, and I will do my best not to shush you because it's just such bad manners. To get back to where we segued in, the events in Michigan. What's your take on that?
I think it's a bunch of crackheads that are anarchist capitalists that got caught shooting their mouths off. And at the end of the day, it's inconsequential. They're extremists. And what's interesting to me is how it kind of just fell off the map on the news cycle. It was real hot a couple days ago, at least at the time of this recording. And I was looking up today of updates and things like that. And a lot of stuff was from a day or two ago, except there was this update, and you discussed with me before the show, was that one or two of them were Marines or Marine reservists.
Yes, there were two Marines. They're no longer Marines. And then two of the other guys are pictured in the Michigan courthouse when the fellows with long guns went in there this last summer.
And one was also seen at a BLM protest as well, commenting on the police and George Floyd and being support of that. So there's a lot of weird, disparaging things that are kind of being said. But the whole white supremacy thing, I feel like, kind of went out the window pretty quickly.
Oh, I'm not saying that this is a white supremacy thing at all. This is you're treading on me and I'm not going to take it. And you're right. It is a bunch of crazy, inconsequential kooks. But just imagine if that hadn't been sniffed out, it's part and parcel of this scary environment that we're in there where it feels like, these people aren't organized, but there's all of them all over the place. And they're so angry at so many different things that there's like this impending, if not civil war, at least like there's going to be skirmishes here and there, it feels like. And that's really scary to me.
I don't think that we're close to a point of getting to a civil war atmosphere. I do see that sort of gurgling, that simmering possibility of that.
The video you made me watch earlier today, though, that guy said there's a civil war going on in America and one side just hasn't started fighting yet. And he meant the Republicans haven't started fighting yet.
Those kind of comments to me, I don't hold a lot of water in. And my feeling on the ground is there are a lot of people that are upset for a lot of different reasons on many different sides, but I do not see a civil war at the moment brewing. And I would just say right now, it's not gonna go the way you think, no matter on which side it is. And I'm just not going to subscribe to the idea or concept that we're in a civil war atmosphere. I can see how people kind of think that their attitudes, and especially that is being expressed in the media with various things going on, from protests to rioting to fights in the streets and different parts of the country, and the vast, vehemently thrown around venom of disagreeing with Donald Trump. Sure, I can see why people think it's a very contentious time, but I don't subscribe or believe that it's a civil war thing. So that's just my thought on it.
I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I've just have never felt this way in my life about America. That's
basically the Michigan guys are a bunch of crazy kooks, and we're glad the FBI and the federal agents caught them back in, what was it, June? Or now the charges are kind of coming out and they're being rounded up.
Yeah,
I'm glad nothing happened.
So let's move from those highly activated crazy people with guns to other highly activated angry people with guns. Okay. Kenosha, the Kenosha shooter. What is his name?
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse. Now this is a teenager,
17-year-old kid at the time that this happened in Kenosha,
and he came from out of state,
Illinois, just right across the border on Wisconsin, like really close.
Sure, but out of state nonetheless.
Correct.
He came to a town that he did not live in, stood on a public street, armed with an assault rifle, and that is against Wisconsin law.
So that's actually incorrect. Wisconsin is an open carry state.
Wisconsin is an open carry state?
Wisconsin is an open carry state. That is correct. So he wasn't violating law in terms of that, but here's where it starts to get a little bit dicey. He's 17 years old. You have to be 18 years or older. He also didn't bring the weapon over state lines. He was given this weapon by a friend who's a native of Wisconsin, so the gun never transported over state lines. Here's my thought about the whole thing that happened, and I'm going to try to be as quick on it as I can because I know I can be long-winded. He's a 17-year-old kid. He should not have been there, period. End of discussion. Secondly, do not be running up on someone that is carrying a weapon of any kind. You don't do that, okay? Just don't. This was a situation that shouldn't have happened either way. Thirdly, and I feel strongly about this, and I'm going to say this with as much passion in my voice and not yell. If you are a gun owner and you go out in these protests or riots or whatever you want to call them, you have to accept the consequences of going out in that situation, whether it's positive or negative. Okay, I'll say that again. Whether it's a negative or positive situation, you have to live with the consequences of being out there to begin with, period. And a 17-year-old kid should not have been there, period. Those people should not have attacked him, period. With that all said, as the situation that unfolded, I think the kid defended himself. Clear as day. He totally did. And we can even get into the specifics of why I believe that, but that is about as brief and as stern as I can make it at the outset.
No, and you showing me the extended timeline of it and watching it this morning, it is clear that he was being harassed. But earlier in the night, there's interview footage of him where he's talking about he got pepper sprayed or something, he said, and they were saying, you got assaulted in a non-lethal way. Are you going to respond? And he says, we don't have non-lethal. And I mean, that is scary to me. Just coming in, the gall of these people coming in, it's psychologically menacing to show up on the streets with assault rifles. It just is, to a large percentage of the population. And then there's another percentage that's super mad about racial injustice, and they're out there, and all of this anger is being fomented in a place that allows people to have guns. And I mean, the conversation we're trying to have here is guns, and we'll get to guns more specifically, but I had a chance to live in a country that's not the United States for a year. I lived in England for a year of college, and they can't carry guns. Most of the police don't even have guns over there. And the per capita murder rate was, America had about 35,000 gun deaths that year or murders that year. And I think there were something like 57 in England, because it's just a heck of a lot harder to kill somebody with your bare hands or with a knife. I think guns are an accelerant. They allow people who are going to be violent in a way that takes their power to the next level. And I know that you talk a lot about responsible gun ownership, and I'm all for that. But I just think I will agree with you on this. He should not have been there in the first place, and everything that happened from that point on was a tragic set of events that everybody is culpable for.
So in terms of him being there, in the interview and in the footage that we watched together, he was interviewed and he was pepper sprayed. And at the same time, when he was saying that we don't have non-lethal means, he's literally saying we have the means to protect ourselves if the situation holds up. And he was also there as a volunteer EMT. There was even footage of a protester that got pepper sprayed, and he's like, I'm an EMT. It was a BLM protester. I'm here to help you. Let me know. And so the fact that this line that was initially thrown out that this kid was out hunting these people is totally false and totally incorrect. As far as getting to knives and guns, actually, when you break down the numbers in terms of the crime statistics, knives and other cutting equipment has higher rates of homicide than rifles, significantly. And then when you factor in bare hands and other blunt objects, it goes up even more percentage-wise, especially in the UK, where they'll have roughly, about 2,000 violent crimes per 100,000 people in the UK versus 460-something per 100,000 people in the United States. So just because they don't have guns doesn't mean that violent crimes don't happen. A weapon is a weapon. So when you last said an assault rifle, okay, a weapon in and of itself is assault. Just you're padding words at that point by calling something an assault rifle or an assault weapon.
Well, don't you think
that's padding words at that point?
I mean, I'm just drawing the distinction, I guess, between a weapon of war and a weapon that is more
all
of
weapons can be a weapon of war.
I'm drawing a distinction between a weapon of war and a weapon that you would traditionally think of as like a hunting rifle, you know? And I know you like to say that they're all weapons of war, but why then do all of the people who are choosing to go out and kill as many people as they can choose these military-style AR-15 style weapons?
Basically, in terms of the FBI statistics that I have looked up, okay, you're looking at right around 360 cases of a rifle being used. Handguns are used way, way, way more than rifles ever are. So to paint a picture that people are going out there brandishing these weapons and doing that, the numbers don't back it up. The cases don't back it up. It just doesn't happen in the frequency that is in the society's mind. And sure, I kind of like the discussion back and forth of assault rifle, assault weapon. This is my opinion. A weapon in and of itself is used for assault. You're padding words on at that point. And I've said, and I won't say that anymore. I'll try not to. But I think it comes down to it's sort of in the mind of people. You say a hunting rifle, a bolt-action rifle. Well, bolt-action rifles have been used in war for a long, long time.
Yeah, but
so even a hunting rifle can be used as a weapon of war.
Sure,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter on what the system, the weapon system is basically laid out as a semi-automatic or a bolt action, lever action, pump, or even full automatic.
How can you say it doesn't matter? An automatic or semi-automatic?
They all can be weapons of war, Jason.
Sure they can. It's just you equating everything being the same again. But these weapons, these AR-15s, these semi-automatic rifles, are meant to inflict the most damage, the widest damage, in the least amount of time possible. A bolt-action rifle is not created to do that. And for you to say that they are the same gun or used for the same thing, it's just not true. Maybe farmers in the Revolutionary War used their rifles, but today there's better technology and people are sporting it and people are using it for mass casualty events. When the Brady Bill was signed, when there was an assault weapons ban, not my term, their term, assault weapons ban, that type of crime, the mass shootings, went down by 70%. So I just think that if we're going to talk gun control, I feel very strongly about weapons of war shouldn't be on the American streets.
Yeah, those numbers that are kind of being thrown out, you have to understand of how those things are calculated. So the numbers for the FBI, the way that they calculate those numbers, they previously for mass shootings, it was, I believe, 2 or more people. Again, folks, look this up just for yourselves. But basically what you're saying, Jason, is the 70% number isn't really totally accurate because, again, you only had 300 some rifles that were used versus tens of thousands for handguns, okay? So when you're talking about high capacity weapons and things of that nature, they're not used in the terms of frequency that they're used in. You have cities like Chicago who have bans on these weapons, and yet the homicide rates and the gun crime rates are through the roof. Every time that you have these things or bills or statutes or regulations that are passed, they just don't work. Actually, the crime goes up when there are certain gun bans. So to just blame a weapon based on how it looks and based on if it's a semi-auto versus a bolt action, that basically just isn't true. Handguns are used even more. So that's why when you hear people saying that they want to ban assault weapons, people have a problem with the language, and then you add on the statistics, and the statistics don't actually back it up. So I disagree with the number you threw out, that 70% reduction rate from the Brady bill. I will have to look into that more just so that I'm sure about that. But from my research, what you term assault rifles, aka modern style semi-automatic rifles, they do not have the numbers that other weapons such as knives, cutting equipment, or even your bare hands kill people.
In totality, correct.
Yes.
We're having two, I think, different arguments here. My argument is that those weapons in particular allow for the types of events that we saw in like Las Vegas or Miami, the mass casualty events that can happen in a matter of minutes. There is another problem in America with handgun violence, and we should probably state where we stand vis-a-vis guns just to begin with.
Okay. Yeah, because getting in those statistics and stuff like that, especially on the spot, kind of turns your heads around a little bit, and it turns our heads around a little. So do the research, look it up for yourselves. You're going to get things that are going to compete against each other, but you're right. We should talk about where our stances are just on them fundamentally.
Yeah, and I would like to, let's preface that by reading the Second Amendment, shall we? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think that could have been worded a little more clearly.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Supreme Court, I believe that there was a case, I think it was in 2008, I believe, where they upheld the right to have semi-automatic rifles. And
I don't want
to regulate. Basically, here's where I'm tying in with the Second Amendment, is that it's keeping up with the weapons of the times, essentially, is what the argument was. And it's our fundamental right as American citizens to have those weapons.
I know you believe that so hard in your heart, but it's just a thing that was written by people who had muskets. You know, they could have never foreseen this. They couldn't have, I just can't imagine that they would have a common sense approach. I know that we're not going to agree on the Second Amendment, and I did a little research on it earlier. The idea of a militia, I mean, these are revolutionary times. You don't have a police force or any of that kind of stuff really established in a lot of places. So they wanted to give the states the right to create a well-regulated militia to do those kinds of policing actions, or what we would think maybe a National Guard would do. And then after the Civil War, state militias got phased out and replaced by the National Guard.
The National Guard.
And so that's kind of the history of that. And there's an argument where people say, well, they're basically saying that well-regulated militias can keep and bear arms. I'm not sure that that's the interpretation I would make of this amendment. It almost seems like there's two things. It's like the first part of the sentence and the second part of the sentence almost disagree with each other. But that said, I'm a Midwestern American guy, and I understand that guns are a part of our culture. I've got hunters in my family. I was in a film once. The only time I've ever shot a gun, I was in a film where I was in a scene where we were skeet shooting. And so in preparation for that, we went out and we shot. And after we were shooting with the rifles for a bit, the guy that had the guns was like, "You want to try some other stuff?" And he went into his shed and he came out, and my God, it was just like a parade of guns. And I will not deny that it is a powerful feeling to shoot a gun.
It is a powerful feeling, but the way that I was raised with guns is to have a severe amount of respect for them, because it's all about in the hands of the user. It's a tool. Like any other tool, it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. So the feeling that I get when I shoot is more of a feeling of respect. Like I know what happens at the end of this thing. I go hunting, so I get food out of that, and I know what happens. So for me, that feeling of power, that sort of that adrenaline rush, doesn't necessarily happen for me. It's more of a very stoic, respectful feeling that I have. So I'm not one of these people that go, yeah, I'm not going out there and I'm not doing that business at all. I have a big amount of respect for it. And I think that's part of the culture. It's how you were raised. If you were raised around them, raised to treat them responsibly, raised to have respect for what happens once it's in your hands, then your attitude changes. Because if you don't have any experience with guns, you're influenced by things outside of it, movies, TV shows, music industry culture, of how everybody thinks that they're John Wick and that's how it all happens. No, that is not at all.
Wouldn't it be great if there was like some sort of national, I don't know, rifle association that helped people to revere and respect their firearms?
There was at one time, and now it's a lobby organization that the left constantly rails against. And it's funny because there is a National Rifle Association.
I know. That's why I brought it up. But I'm saying that they've gone so far afield from what their mission should be. And I agree with you. Like, the only way to have a weapon is to respect that weapon's power.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe in, this is the thing that bothers me about the NRA, is they're just so political, and they're constantly trying to put into law the ability to have these assault weapons and all of these things that I just think it's a little bit above and beyond. And another thing that I think is, it could be very common sense, and I don't understand why we don't do it. Well, I do understand, because you think they're going to come and get your guns if they're on a registry. But everything that we have, like our vehicles are registered. We can't do a hit and run and drive off and they don't know who owns that car. I just think that it would go a long way towards people acting responsibly if they had to register that firearm in a national database. And it would help us on the back end come up with linking people to events, because we would know whose this was unless it was stolen. But that is so... that is not something that your side of the aisle wants at all. Do you feel that way?
About like background checks and
registration for guns, like you have registration for a car?
In terms of registering guns, it's not on the whole something that I support. I think weapons that are automatic weapons, what the layman would think is a machine gun, where you lay down on the trigger and you just get a constant stream, yes.
But
those are
fully automatic guns aren't available, right? Only semi-automatic.
No, they are. You can get a permit for that. You have to apply for that, and it has to be through the federal government. And there's a lengthy period, and there's things that you have to go through. I mean, it's not like you can go to a gun store and buy a fully automatic weapon. You can't do that.
So would you explain to me what the difference between an automatic and a semi-automatic is?
Sure. So an automatic is where you hold down the trigger, you hold it down, and it's a constant stream for as long as you hold down the trigger. A semi-automatic requires a trigger to be pulled every time in order for a round to eject and to become a projectile. That's the difference.
So semi-automatic, you can basically shoot as fast as you can pull your finger?
Yes, in theory. But in practice, it doesn't really work like that. It's not like the movies, because the gun jumps, it moves around. It's a lot more difficult to try to get aimed back on your target that way. And
I know.
You have to be very trained in order to do that. It's not easy. even with an automatic, if you just lay it down, it has a jumping sort of pattern to it. And it's the same thing with semi-automatics. It has a pattern where it moves.
So for those types of weapons, you would be okay with registering them?
Automatic weapons, yes.
Not semi-automatic?
Not semi-automatic, no.
Huh.
No, I do not.
We're talking about guns in America. Do you think America is just fine, status quo with guns? What would you change? Would you change nothing?
As far as what changes to make, man, off the top of my head right now, gut reaction, no. I think the only thing.
So you think everything's just fine?
No, I'm not saying that's just fine. I'm saying in terms of the laws. I mean, there's already laws on the books that if you use a weapon in a crime or a violent manner, it's part of the crime and it's added to it. So I think in terms of laws on the books, no. But what I really, really, really wish, and if there is something that I could say that could change, is more access to training. Really teaching people how to respect a firearm, how to properly use it, how to properly maintain it, how to properly store it, learn the laws. Because people aren't exposed to training, they get misrepresentations presented to them by political motivations on both parties, but primarily in this case, liberals or Democrats. And they really need to get educated on how to do all these things on top of knowing the laws. And that's what I wish would be different. And I'm not a proponent of creating a national organization or a federal organization or agency that is responsible for training its citizens how to use firearms. Many other countries kind of do some
But see, that's
things like
really
that.
the only way. Something with that awesome of a power has to be, it's all fine and well to be the responsible gun owner, but anybody pretty much in America can get a gun.
No, not anybody. A 5-year-old kid can't go out and get a firearm.
A 5-year-old kid can't go get a firearm, but a 17-year-old can.
A 17-year-old can, yeah. I mean, you can be 12 years old and hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the legal age to hunt. And when you
can
go
be
through,
way too angry and
hold on,
45.
Hold on a second. So at 12 years old, when you go through hunter safety, you learn how to properly respect and use firearms. And really what it comes down to, it comes down to the family environment. If your family or if you don't have a friend that is into hunting or sport shooting, like skeet shooting or target shooting, you're not going to get exposed to this. And so it usually then is people who grow up as adults and they kind of find an interest on their own or through their peer group. So if you don't automatically grow up in a culture of this, I'm not sure how and this is the thing, how do you get people that don't grow up in a culture to respect firearms or in a hunting culture or in a hunting family and get the training that you need? And so that's the one thing that I would want to change is get people more training and know the laws.
Okay, well then I think that would be federally mandated. I mean, I think that that's something just like I can't operate the drone that I use without an FAA license. I have to take like 3/4 of the small aircraft license and pass it in order to be able to commercially use a drone because I have liability for that. Just like you should have liability for something that can take life. I just don't, it sounds like you want that, but you don't say that.
I don't want the federal government to be responsible for that.
Who else then?
I think it should be up to the citizens to create organizations amongst themselves.
Have you seen America?
I'm just telling you what I wish that would happen, what I want to happen, what I hope would happen. To me, having a government training citizens, to me, has scary historical implications. I would rather have it be in the hands and the power of the people on a state, on a local, on a county, in a township level. And when you start having a national federal governmental agency training its citizens, it makes the hair stand up on the back of my neck a little bit because some countries that sort of do this end up being totalitarian states. And I just rather have it be in the power of the citizens. That's just how I feel about it. And I know I'm kind of being incoherent in explaining that, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just feel
but
like
I just don't want a federal government training the citizens. Let the citizens do that for themselves. But how are you going to get people to take the initiative?
I think that just like the airspace is regulated by the FAA, just like the radio waves are regulated. I just think that it makes sense to regulate certain things, and I think that guns are a part of life in America, and they're not going away. So one of the best things we can do is strongly regulate them. And you would have thought that after Sandy Hook. We could have gotten some sort of political will to have common sense regulations or something passed that was meaningful. The slaughter of innocents. I know we don't want to get into the entire rabbit hole of school shootings, but it does feel like there's these cultural moments where maybe something can happen. Maybe it will sway the opinion and the political tides, but it just seems like nothing does.
I think the regulations that we have in place are enough. You know, you can't have bazookas, you can't have missiles, you can't have grenade launchers, artillery, things of that nature. But guns in and of themselves, lever actions, pumps, handguns, semi-autos, bolt actions, fine. But automatic weapons, yes, those should be regulated just because. I mean, as a gun owner, I think that they should be, but they should be made available. But you need to get the proper training and you need to understand the laws. And you also need to make sure that you go through a process where it's registered for automatic weapons. But everything else, no.
All right. Well, if there is one thing that I would wish would happen right now, it would be for armed people to stop going into public spaces, especially courthouses and state houses, and standing there psychologically intimidating people around them. There is no place for that. There is no place for that. That is taking things to a level that does not need to be. It's raising the temperature. And it's just kind of oh my God, it's like a guy with a small dick in a sports car.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And to see that those people are called true patriots by Trump when they're breaking the law, entering the state house that way.
Every state has different laws for things like that, though. And I specifically don't know if you can open carry. I think you can open carry on the Capitol, but courthouses, I don't believe that they are allowed to do so. And this thing that
I just feel like they're raising the temperature.
Yeah. Here, hold on a second, because you mentioned the psychological impact of seeing people carrying weapons. To me, that just comes down to the individual and just not being experienced. I mean, it's literally a paperweight. It's not going to do anything at all. It's all in the user's hands.
But you don't know that user. That's just some person on the street with a weapon. I mean, it's flaunting something that I don't understand why they're doing that.
Because they have the legal right to do so. They have the legal right to carry it. And just because someone sees that and it bothers them isn't a good enough reason to have somebody not carry a weapon. I feel like
that is the reason they're doing it. They're doing it just to bother people.
If you think that people are intentionally doing that to bother people, I would agree. In one hand, yes. Because they are demonstrating that they have the right as a Second Amendment to carry, and if it's a state allowed, open carry. It's okay for them to do that. And it's okay for people to be a little bit intimidated by someone that has that. But just because you're intimidated doesn't mean that person doesn't have a right to do it, especially when they're a responsible gun owner. And even though you don't know if someone's crazy or not, bro, no offense, but that's life. I just don't know who it could. Anybody could be crazy and not have a weapon in their hand, and they can do damage to someone. They can kill someone. They can hurt someone. I don't think just by the mere fact that you have a weapon and you're carrying it is some sort of psychological intimidation. But I would concede that there are people who I don't agree with politically that do that. And even on the political spectrum, there are people who do that, and there are people on the left who have done that as well.
There is just no reason to walk down an American street with an assault rifle.
Again, there's no such thing as an assault rifle, Jason.
Well, there was an assault rifle ban. That wasn't my term. That was the U.S. Congress's term, Brett.
Yes, and who was the party that was in power when it was implemented and voted upon?
It was Reagan's years.
Reagan's years.
Yeah.
So wasn't it the Clinton weapons ban?
Oh, it was the Brady bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The Brady bill didn't go through till 94, did it?
Correct. Clinton.
But he had a Republican Congress.
Not at the time. The switchover came after that.
Did it?
Yeah. The Newt Gingrich. What was it? God, I forget what it was called. There was
I call it the beginning of the end.
Of course you do, Jason.
But I got to get the jokes in where I can. It's kind of heated today.
But I'm pretty sure that the assault weapons ban that you're referring to came out of the Clinton years.
No, you're right. It stemmed from the assassination attempt on Brady or on Reagan, but it didn't go into effect until Clinton's years.
That was a handgun that was used in that assassination attempt. It wasn't an AR or an AK.
Well, then why was it an assault weapons ban?
I think that if I remember correctly, that kind of came out of a lot of the gang violence that was taking place, and some of these automatic weapons were being used in some of these cases. You remember the movie Heat, where they had that long shooting battle going down the street for like most of the end of the movie?
You told me it's not like John Wick.
No. So if I remember right, that was loosely inspired out of an incident that happened in L.A.
Yeah, I do remember that.
Okay. So it was sort of this growing incidence of gang violence. And incidents like that happened with the bank robbers in LA. Maybe the time's off in that, but it was incidents like that sort of propagated this assault weapons ban. And that included semi-automatic rifles in that ban. And
that was passed by a Republican Congress?
I don't think
it was before.
I think it was before the switch over from the election, where then the legislative branch ended up leaning towards Republican as a result of after that passing in a Democrat Congress.
Oh, God, we need another Democrat Congress. Get that stuff passed.
Yeah, the assault weapons ban was a failure. It was.
Dude, it was not
a failure. It was a failure.
Mass shooting deaths fell 70% under the ban.
I wish I could look up the statistics.
I looked it up today. I'm telling it to you.
Yeah, but that's the thing with statistics, and I even can see that on my side. Like, they can all be used in different ways.
I had a teacher once that said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics.
And I apologize to my gun supporting Second Amendment brethren out there if I'm not stating all this stuff accurately. So, I apologize. I'm doing the best I can here. But as far as the Brady bill result, I'd have to look in that and double check that. I just know that assault rifles, listen to me now, getting influenced by you. So stupid. Rifles being used in homicides are so significantly low compared to knives and other cutting equipment and the use of hands. So again, I think it's about 80% of the times that guns were used in all the incidences combined were actually used in self-defense. And about 200,000 incidences of women protecting themselves. So that's why, as someone who believes in the Second Amendment, I believe people who, like in this case, to use a PC term, marginalized minorities, they should have the right to have a firearm and own a firearm and conceal carry or open carry. I think all citizens of all spectrums should have the ability to do that. It's a unifying factor, in my opinion. Everyone should have the right to defend and protect themselves. And I think it's funny to me in how when women get training and how to use firearms, some, not all, believe me, some, not all, are a little bit intimidated by it. And then they do it. And I'm telling you what, women are better shots than men, in my experience. And they end up knowing that they can protect themselves. They now can be someone who can stand up for them, and they have the ability to do that. And that's a self-empowering thing for people who are marginalized and women, and I think also men as well.
Yeah, but how many of those people are buying AR-15s for self-defense?
Not a lot, but which is interesting because it's funny how like Joe Biden says, "Oh, go get a shotgun." Have you seen videos of like these 120-pound girls that are using shotguns? They get knocked on their butts, but then they use an AR-style weapon system, and they're highly accurate and they're really good with it, and it's
just
not
another,
as much recoil.
Like, and in my mind, that's a reason for us not to have them. It's too easy to kill people with them.
You get hung up again on thinking that these are weapons that go out and kill people, but the numbers don't back it up. It's handguns primarily that ended up doing this.
I know, and we're gonna talk across each other on that. And
Yes.
I don't disagree that there's handgun violence, and I get it. America is the Wild West. We've got guns. It's good that people can defend themselves. There are good uses of guns. I just think that we've gotten out of hand with it, and we don't have the political will, or we don't have the, you see surveys, and a lot of people like 70, 80% sometimes are for these gun control measures that the Democrats try to get passed. But because there's such a powerful lobbying force on the other side, there's just enough resistance that these things don't happen. And it's so frustrating to me that we can't just do a few common sense things.
It's interesting that you mentioned that the polls support that. I've seen polls saying the opposite, and even in terms when they say of like,
are those InfoWar polls though?
No, they're not, Jason.
I mean, seriously, like
There are polls that show that even gun control in terms of topics for the presidential election is really low on the list of things that people are ultimately concerned about. And I think that when you have those polls of do you want to have better gun legislation?
It's not
I think
tied
people's
to the
hearts are in the right place, but when you get down to the brass tacks of the regulations themselves, then people start to part ways with it a little bit.
Yeah, they're not asking the question in relation to the current presidential race. It's just in relation to the issue.
No, there's a poll that of the rankings of the different.
Well, yeah, you're talking again,
and it's really low.
No, totally. It's as an election issue. I'm saying as an actual issue, 70% of Americans agree on sort of the democratically proposed gun control legislation.
Without having the numbers again,
It's
stuff off the top of the head.
It's part and parcel.
I can't contest that at the moment, but I feel like in my gut that is not totally 100% accurate. But again,
buddy, I'm telling you,
I don't
if
have my
anything,
laptop in front of me and I can't look it up right now.
If anything, that number's low. It's part and parcel of us living in a. Democrats are a majority who are oftentimes ruled by the minority party because of parliamentary things and lobbying and feeling very strongly about stuff.
There's a vast amount of more support for people to have access to firearms and for
I'm not saying no
hunting.
access.
Or even, okay, so you're talking about restrictions.
Yeah,
support.
I'm talking about an assault weapons ban. I'm talking about, if not that, then registering all of those weapons.
I would be up for just regulations on automatic weapons. We've said that before. But again, everybody keeps saying assault weapons.
But nobody has automatic weapons. They all have semi-automatic weapons.
But how do you classify automatic or assault weapons at that point? Because
anything a soldier uses in Baghdad.
Well, that includes handguns, it includes shotguns, it includes bolt action, that includes a whole lot of things.
The machine gun that soldiers are given.
An automatic gun. Automatic.
So the
automatic weapons.
So the semi-automatic is just like the slightly governed version of that.
If you want to term it like that, yeah, it's a little bit governed because you have to actively pull the trigger in order to eject a round.
All right. We're never going to agree on that. And we are probably running long.
That's all right, though.
The one thing that I didn't want to leave this conversation without mentioning was, and I know that you're not on the internet, and I've recently gotten back on because we're trying to promote this show. But right now, there is a meme going around that's guys in a pickup truck.
Yeah, you told me about this.
Yeah, but it's like white guys in a pickup truck with rifles in America and jihadis with rifles in a pickup truck, and it says, "Explain the difference. I'll wait." And I mean, it's a little.
I can answer that.
It's a little scary that America's starting to look like places where people just drive around in pickup trucks with guns.
My gut initial reaction is the difference is one set are terrorists and the other set are patriots.
Well, I think that those terrorists would call themselves patriots, and they would call you a terrorist.
And that's one man's terrorist is another man's patriot.
Yeah.
And that exists. That exists in the world and exists in history. There's good examples of that. But yeah, sure. Ha. It's a funny meme. Yeah, sure. That's funny. But nah, I don't think the two equate. But it is funny how you got guys in back of pickups in one part of the world and the other. Like, which of these things are not like the other?
It's just too much testosterone and ill will.
Yeah, ultimately at the end,
misplaced will. I don't think any of these people think what they're doing is wrong. I think
they don't.
They're all very righteous about it, which is almost scarier.
Why? Why is that scary?
Because if people were righteous, people are always more scary. Like people that believe to the death something, those are the scariest people.
I guess it depends on what they believe in.
Yeah.
I mean, think you can have extremist beliefs.
I think there are shades of gray in everything.
Sure.
And it just, I don't know. I don't even know how to wrap this conversation up.
One thing that I wanted to say is that regardless of whatever regulation or law that we put in place, criminals and people who are psychotics, sociopaths, or want to do harm, they will find a way to skirt and get around the laws. Ultimately, it's the law-abiding citizen that is being regulated. And that's something that we need to kind of keep in mind. And I just think at the end of the day, If people just learned and got trained and understood to respect the firearm, because if you lie it down on a table, it doesn't have legs, it won't get up and move, and it won't do anything unless someone actually uses it. And it's more about the user, the person who has that in their hands, than anything else.
Yeah, but just look at all the users in America.
Think about this. If there's 200 some plus million guns in circulation in the United States today, like was it 270 million, 200 million? It's like right around there. It's really high. It could be a whole lot worse, and it's not, because on large part, people who are gun owners are responsible, respectful individuals, and an armed society is a polite society.
And sometimes they're the Bundys, and they go and take over a federal building in the middle of nowhere and squat. That kind of nonsense, I feel like if that was black people or brown people doing that, it would be a completely different response, both politically, use of force-wise, and the public sentiment.
There have been cases throughout our country's history, especially during the Civil War, where armed slaves were able to create uprisings against the Confederacy and the Ku Klux Klan and other folks. And so it's not mutually exclusive that it's the white guy in the back of the woods. There are militias of all race, colors, and creeds. And I think that should be encouraged. These people have the right to protect themselves, their property, their loved ones, this country. And to start regulating the
They don't
people's
have the
ability,
right to protect the country. They have the right to
as an
protect
American
themselves.
citizen, I disagree. You have if we are in a state
See,
of war,
that's where it goes too far,
No,
where people step in and they take responsibility that is not theirs to take.
I disagree. If the country is invaded, and I'm just using this as an example.
If the Russians land, yes.
Okay, see, that's what I'm okay, but
I'm not talking about a political domestic disagreement.
No, you don't. No, you don't want to.
But that's
absolutely not. You're not going to take a gun into a political debate just because you disagree with someone.
But that's much more likely than the scenario you're putting forward.
No, every country has gotten invaded in history. It's happened. There hasn't. It doesn't exist where it doesn't happen. And so having an armed citizenry is a good thing. The only thing that I wish that people were more proactive on, especially Second Amendment supporters, is trying to create more and creative ways to teach responsible gun use. And that's the one thing that I wish we would change. But until that mindset starts happening in the mainstream, we're always going to have this tug of war of, you can't have it because it scares me. Well, yes, I can, because I'm trying to protect myself. And it ends up being a government about the haves and have-nots. When at the end of the day, if a person's a responsible gun owner, they're not breaking the law. Good. But you're never going to be able to regulate evil. You're never going to be able to create enough regulations to keep things out of bad people's hands to do bad things. And I wish that there was a regulation or a law we can come up with where we could do that, but there just isn't. And so we need to allow responsible citizens protect themselves.
Regulations aren't for elimination of things. They're for mitigation of things. We regulate all manner of substances, things that go into the air. We regulate if you have too many DWIs, you can't drive
and
anymore.
Those are eliminating things.
But it's not a. You're right. You can't get rid of evil. You can't do that. But you recognize that you can curb it. You can help beat it around the edges. And I think that's what regulations are for. But I think we're not going to agree.
No.
But maybe this is a good place to end it, because I think we're at least not fighting.
Yeah. And dude, this was a great discussion. This was. We did a little bit better than I think what we thought this was going to end up being. You did great, dude.
I'm afraid that you got to stop post gaming during the show, bud.
I don't care. I'm going to post game all day long.
No.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
I'll be interested to listen to this one back. This was we were a little tense going into this. I think it went all right.
I wish discussions like this would happen more often.
Yeah.
And with as much respect as you and I have for each other.
Well, and if anybody wants to comment about this or give us suggestions for taking this further, or other things that you would like to hear us talk about that you don't hear talked about very much, I mean, that's what we feel like we can offer.
Yeah, please offer the suggestions. And I would like to actually have some people, I would welcome fact checking on both sides of the Second Amendment argument. I would like to see that, because I want to hear what other people's thoughts are that disagree with me. Again, helps me understand and better articulate my own.
Brett wants other people's statistics, not mine.
That's true. I don't trust you as far as I can throw you.
All right, buddy. Should we call it a show?
I think we should, pal.
Okay.
Goodbye, Jason.
Goodbye, Brett.